Welcome back to another podcast episode where we help aspiring developers get jobs and junior developers grow. In this episode, we're going to be reviewing Turing School. And like usual, we try to get past the marketing fluff that these programs put out and get honest and transparent reviews from the students. So Turing School was also another one that quite a few people from my community requested. So I'm excited to dive in. But like usual, we'll go ahead and get started with our intros. So Connie, when did you graduate? And did you find a position yet? Or are you still looking? And what was your old industry before you switched to coding?
So I just graduated in April, end of April, in the 2010 front-end cohort, and I'm still looking for a job. I previously and kind of currently too am a musician and a vocal coach. So that was what I was doing before. I'm doing that a little bit now in between me finding a job. So yeah.
Okay, really cool. Have you built any apps around that?
No, I actually kind of felt like a separation with the music thing and coding for some reason. I think because music is such an outlet for me, part of why I went into programming is to do something very different from that. So no, not yet.
Okay, sounds good. All right, how about you, Alex?
Yeah, so I graduated in September of 2020, and I currently work as a data engineer for a consultancy here in Denver. And before Turing, I was a data analyst, but wanted to be more on the engineering side. But I did do the front end program versus the back end.
Okay, so what made you want to become a data engineer when you did the front end program?
Well, I thought I wanted to get out of data. So I did the front end because they taught you JavaScript, and I knew I could do front end and back end with that. And then I graduated in September, and I got a job as a contract back end developer around November and did not like it. Missed data a little bit, and so found my spot in data engineering.
Okay, cool. How about you, Joshua?
Yeah, I graduated last month in June of 2021. I'm still looking for a job. I actually hopped into Turing after high school. So my old industry, I did construction between end of high school and start of Turing just to make some money. But yeah.
Okay. Well, welcome to the podcast. We're going to jump right in. Thanks for introducing yourselves. So why did you choose Turing? And we are going to talk over each other. We'll get used to it, though.
I guess I can start. I was just doing research. I was first thinking about the boot camp they had at DU. Was doing more research, but I found that Turing was spoken highly of from my personal research. So that's why I chose it.
Okay. How about you two?
Similar story. Yeah. I had looked into a few. I think I actually took an online survey. Turing wasn't even an option, but I was looking at a couple of different boot camps. But a couple of my good friends had suggested Turing, and I ended up taking one of the try coding classes and just really liked their approach to teaching the subject matter. And so, yeah, that's kind of what drew me in. That kind of sealed the deal for me.
Okay.
Yeah, when I was looking into Turing, they were in person in downtown Denver, and I knew a couple graduates, and they had nothing but great things to say about it. And so I thought being in person would be really beneficial too. And then everyone went remote the Thursday before I started.
Oh, no. Okay. So just to clarify, all three of you went through the front end, and I specifically chose that. But what made you choose the front end track over the back end?
JavaScript for me. I knew it was a versatile language. So I knew I could be front end or back end with it and be able to jump right into it. And it was so opposite of anything else I had been in. So I just wanted to kind of jump both feet in and learn something new.
Okay. I agree with you. And I do think they teach Ruby on the back end, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's correct.
It's a little less marketable. I can understand you wanting to learn JavaScript, but let's jump into kind of the curriculum. What do you guys learn?
JavaScript.
Okay. a lot of JavaScript.
Yeah, I would say the first half of our curriculum was learning vanilla JavaScript, ES5 in Mod 1, ES6 in Mod 2, for loops in Mod 1, array prototype methods in Mod 2, and then going into frameworks and kind of bigger scale projects, Mod 3 and 4.
Okay. Would you two add anything to that?
Yeah, I guess I could add. I feel like there was a major focus in JavaScript to back up Connie. A little less focus on HTML and CSS. Like, I guess that's something I kind of would like to see more of. Personally, I took a web development class in high school, so I actually had some experience in just those two. So I kind of was good in those, but I feel like there was kind of a lack in those two.
Yeah, for a front-end track, I would agree. Would you recommend people supplement the HTML and CSS before they come into Turing?
I think that'd be... Oh, sorry, Connie.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I believe that would be really beneficial.
Yeah, and I was going to say that's actually something I recommend whenever I talk to anyone who's about to enroll or start at Turing is do as much self-teaching as you can with HTML and CSS, because you won't get a lot of that in class.
Yeah, I would echo that as well. And then just add in Mod 4, you do get to work with the backend students so they combine you. And that's cool because you just get to meet other people that you haven't worked with before and learn a little bit how the backend and front end like truly connect. And I think that's beneficial too.
And this Turing school, it's a long program, isn't it?
8 months.
8 months. I wonder why they didn't include more CSS. I'm actually kind of curious about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you feel like, okay, so 8 months. 8 months is a long time. Did they break it up into different segments of like the types of things that you actually would learn? Did they have like a data structures and algorithms month? Did they have like, how did they kind of break it up across 8 months? Because 8 months is a long time.
I feel like they trick you into it. So you don't have set like, oh, here we like learn algorithms this month. It's just like building on the concepts. It's kind of like Connie mentioned, the fundamentals and like vanilla JavaScript, push those heavily. It's like, all right, learn how to do everything with for loops. Now we'll introduce you to kind of like the prototype methods to do things faster. So building on things that way and through projects and group work versus specific outlined topics, if that makes sense.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Okay, well, would you guys add anything to what you learned with the curriculum? Pretty straightforward from what they advertise?
Yeah, I guess one thing I could add is the last two projects you actually do get a little bit of freedom to explore other technologies. In my case, I went and learned Postgres for one, and then went and learned Redux on the other one, because React is the framework that they focus on.
Do you get autonomy to build your own, like your own choice of a project as well?
In the later half, yeah.
Yeah, Mod 3 and 4, so that last half of the curriculum is really like pretty much what we make it out to be, which is pretty cool. I think it's a really useful experience to have, especially getting your feet wet with diving into a project from beginning to end. Because up until that point, if I'm remembering correctly, we usually will get some sort of a spec to follow. And so Mod 3, midway through Mod 3, I think is the first time we really get to come up with our own ideas and collaborate with some of our cohort peers.
Okay. What project were you most proud of when you came out of the program?
For me, it was definitely those projects that we got to come up with our own ideas. I did. Kind of funny that I said I didn't really have an interest in doing anything music oriented, but I did do a lyric app that took from the Words API to create song lyrics, or to kind of help songwriters prompt themselves out of writer's block. And so that was a really fun project for me, because it was something that you had to really go through beginning to end of the user experience and how you're going to implement like all of the concepts they wanted us to with API requests and building out, the whole like functionality of it from beginning to end. And so I think that made it more rewarding to see what you had learned up until that point. So that is something I'm really grateful for, with like all that they had kind of pushed in with those fundamentals of JavaScript. When you get to set out on your own project, at least I felt like pretty equipped to do what it was that I wanted to do and what I wanted to implement.
Okay, cool. What about you two? What did you guys build? Something that you're proud of?
Yeah, mine was an email marketing application. So you could upload a CSV of emails and connect to an API that would basically tell you which ones were valid. It wasn't like super fancy or anything, but if you had like not a valid ending, if you've used something other than like Gmail, like didn't add a .com, it would flag it, and then it would output you the good emails, a report of like all the ones that passed or didn't pass, and then kind of a chart of like percentages and stuff to let you know how your list was. And you could download the results.
Okay. Okay, no, never mind. I don't have any questions. Sounds pretty cool. How about you, Joshua?
Yeah, I think the one that I was most proud of is the one that we did implement, Postgres. We didn't have that long. We didn't have that long for that project. I think it was 9 or 10 days. But the idea of it was we made a platform for junior devs like ourselves to kind of post little question cards. You specify what language you want help in. And then like a senior dev could accept that card, kind of get in contact with you via Slack or email. I think we used email. But they could like help you out, maybe guide you. Basically, senior devs can guide these junior devs that have questions about their code. What they could do to improve is really the main idea of it.
Did you ever make it public? Try to get a user base behind it?
We hosted the front end and back end, but we never did like an authentication system. So it was really just kind of a local thing for now.
Was picking up a database and building out a backend encouraged in these projects, or just optional?
It was optional. That was just they called it stretch tech. That's like the one we wanted to learn on our own.
Interesting. Okay. How big were your cohorts?
I think they've grown since Alex's time, I would assume, because I know that they've gotten a little bit bigger each session, it feels like.
Okay.
Ours was around 30, and then 2 to 3 instructors, I think, per cohort, or per mod.
Mine was 12.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat as Connie. I think it was around 30 people.
Did they start growing once they transitioned mainly remote?
I got the impression that was the case. Okay. I don't know for sure, but I know that that's kind of where it started to seem like the cohorts were getting bigger, because I had started right after they decided to go remote.
Okay. What do you think of the instructors?
I think they're great.
Yeah.
They're fun.
I
mean, it's unique because most of them are kind of, I mean, a lot of, well, we all are adults, right, as students. And so it's a bit of a different setting being in an environment where your teachers are your age or even younger. I mean, it was still professional and everything, but it was fun. It was like fun camaraderie. There was still, it was tough. I don't really know like what to say about it other than like, I mean, it was still a pretty rigorous program. So it wasn't like they were easy on us by any means, but I think they were very empathetic to our situation and the amount of work and stress we were under at times.
Okay. Sounds like both of you probably agree. Anything you'd add about the instructors?
Yeah, I think I would just expand a little bit on like you were saying, Connie, the empathetic side that they show. Because if everyone's like really struggling with a concept all at once, they kind of acknowledge like, oh, maybe I should be teaching this in a different way. Like they don't continue to try to teach you one way that you're just not getting. Like they will change it up to where it fits like the student's needs.
Okay, cool. I like that. Sounds good. What was the real time commitment? Because I know it might like list it as 40 hours a week, but what was your time commitment like?
I would say it was more than 40 hours a week, to be honest. Some projects, like you would get on your computer at, I believe classes start at 9 a.m. I may be wrong. It might have been 8. I think it was 9. But there was times I wouldn't get off my computer really until like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. It really depended on your group, like what was their work preferences, but there was some long weeks. I would say up to maybe 70, 80 hours a week.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah, I think depending on various factors, because they'll harp on that quite a bit, especially like your first week at Turing, about trying to balance your schedule and giving yourself like self-care and time to recuperate and stuff. But it's always easier said than done, especially if you're someone who struggles more. You might spend more time. I think on average they say it's like 60 to 70 hours total, but I would say I was probably more on like the 70 to 80, just because I felt like I did struggle, or I needed more time to practice some of the concepts. And so that, as far as like self-studying or like group work, that's kind of on your own time. And that could be anywhere between like the 20 to 40 hours outside of classroom time, which can be a lot.
Okay. What do you average, Alex?
Yeah, probably between 70 and 80. 80 for sure near the final projects and kind of final exam time. Those were always like really gnarly weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So often you hear with like 3-month coding boot camps, people getting burned out towards the end of it. This is 8 months with 70 to 80 hours. I'm almost worried. That actually sounds extremely unhealthy. What are steps that they take to like really help keep your physical and mental health in check?
We do get a week off every 6 weeks. And I think most cohorts throughout their time will get like a 2-week break in there at some point. Because I think there's one in July and then there's another 2-week break around the holidays. So that helps break it up a little bit. But there are like counseling. There's a counselor on staff who's great, June. And he's available for like 3 or 4 sessions per mod. So I think if you are more on the anxious, stressed out side, it's good to use that as a resource. And the teachers give squishy times to kind of give students that opportunity to vent to them if you need it. There's cohort retros, there's lunch groups. I think it's very much on the mind of the staff at Turing that it's a stressful environment. So I think they do what they can.
Okay. That is quite a bit. A 1 week break every 6 weeks is actually really good. I wonder if they had any cohorts where they didn't have that 1 week break. I feel like they would have figured out pretty quickly to give those breaks. But okay, that was my main concern when I saw the length of this program. And I didn't expect 70 to 80 hours, but you're probably just students that want to put in extra work and, make sure you actually get tons from what you actually put into the coding bootcamp. So that's good to hear. A little bit less concerned about that. So when you graduated, how well prepared did you feel like you were for an actual developer position?
Well prepared. They teach you all the modern concepts and test-driven development. I got my first, when I had my contract gig as a backend developer, I basically built out their whole test suite and trying to get them to like an automated point. So no, I would say, and they also introduce you to agile practices pretty early on. So you feel comfortable with like daily stand-ups, retros, sprint planning, everything that goes with that. But I think there's also just a reality that getting your first software job it's hard. Like companies, they want to hire mid-level and up. They don't want to hire the juniors, especially in Q4 of last year.
Okay. How about you two?
Go ahead, Connie.
My answer is a bit mixed. I feel like they do a good job preparing us, but I also have experienced a lot of times where I don't necessarily feel prepared, and that is probably some of that imposter syndrome stuff, and residual, like maybe burnout from the long hours being at Turing. But I do recognize like Mod 4 especially, and I think this is more recent thing too, they've spent a lot more time on professional development and giving us practice time with mock interviews and time in class to go over those questions and like simulations of what to kind of expect, and giving us time to like go out on interviews and things like that without it affecting whether or not we do well in that final mod. So I think that's all really helpful. I think it just kind of depends person to person.
Yeah, and I'm sure it helped that I had a smaller cohort as well. So I got like a little bit more one-on-one time with the career and like professional development instructors, or career coaches. That's their terms.
Yeah. I'm going to extend this. Since I'm in a little different position coming straight out of high school, I've probably only personally had like generally like under a handful of interviews. So interviews are still a pretty scary thing for me. Not to say Turing didn't prepare me. It's just, people coming from different careers have those professional interview experience, so they kind of have something to base off. Personally, I didn't interview for my construction job, so it's just something new. I've definitely improved since my first interview. I think it's really just gaining experience off of interviews, to be honest. Those first ones are always going to be the hardest, but you're always improving yourself when you're doing those at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. It'll get easier. It definitely will. So it all sounds pretty good. I don't really think I have any yellow flags or anything that comes to mind. It does feel like, a big downside is like you basically have to quit your job for 8 months and you have to have some sort of financial backing. And then when you graduate, you also need financial backing for those months. I actually didn't look this up. Do they offer any sort of like payment program or ISA?
They have financial aid available through a few different institutions, I think. And I think with their accreditation, that will help even more with people getting financial aid. That was definitely something I how to use. Otherwise, Turing wouldn't have been an option for me. But yeah, the whole aspect of having to quit your job and just dive fully in was definitely something I considered quite a bit.
Of course. Okay. So what could they improve? Feel free to think about it.
They've probably gotten better about it now, but I would say in my time, for the first like little half, just because the whole world had to go remote, it felt like all their communities and everything that they advertised just kind of fell off. And they started coming back alive like when I was heading out. So that was a bit of a bummer, which is just kind of a product of the times. But I would say that. And then the instructors are great. But for the front end, at least, there are really only a handful that have had like team lead jobs as developers. And I think it would be nicer to have a little bit, if they had like longer real world experience. But Turing does cultivate a really great community. So a lot of people will go work a job for a year and come back and want to teach, which I think says a lot too. But as a student, it's kind of like, when you only have a couple instructors who really know what it's like in the real world, past to just like software engineer title, it can get a little bit harder.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And yeah, with the community aspect too, that was a big factor in why I wanted to go to Turing. So it was kind of a bummer when everything went remote, and I had even considered like deferring enrollment to when maybe things would go back in person again. Thankfully I didn't, because now they're permanently remote. But yeah, I think they're starting to figure out like ways to bring that community feel back, which is really good to see. I'm really jealous that Alex only had 12 people in our cohort. I think that would be something that would like be really wonderful to have if they could, I don't know, figure out a way to do that. I think that would fix a lot of things.
Yeah, that's fair. And a lot of not a lot, some programs are starting to cap that cohort size compared to their instructor ratio. But one benefit they do have is it sounds like they at least have 2 instructors for those 30 people. But of course, you shrink that class size, they're going to get more attention, and that's always ideal. How about you, Joshua?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be great if they did reduce cohort size. I think that's the biggest thing, honestly. I'm not the most talkative person. I'm kind of shy, to be honest. So I wouldn't really feel comfortable just being like, hey, I need help in front of everyone. So other people kind of were doing that. Like there's a small handful that kind of take up most of the space, which is my own fault for not being able to speak up for myself. But with the reduced cohort size, I feel like that problem would kind of solve itself, honestly.
Maybe they did bring in too many students when they transitioned into remote. I mean, it's profit, right? And so it's something for them to seriously consider, especially if they're going to be getting that feedback from if you are saying it, I'm sure other students are saying it. So I think that's good feedback. And Joshua, you're doing an excellent job with the podcast. Wouldn't have expected you to be shy. So kudos to you.
Thanks.
That's it. That's the whole podcast. So I think I got a good summary. What I do want to, I think we have time for our bonus question. Yeah, we have time. If you had to give one final piece of advice for aspiring developers, what would it be? And it doesn't necessarily need to be relevant to the coding bootcamp specifically. Like one final piece of advice maybe you would have wanted to know when you were starting out.
I can start off. I'm going to just say, don't be scared to not know. I actually had to repeat the first module. I wasn't really expecting it to be that intense. They say it's intense, but it was a little more than I expected personally. But that kind of kicked me into gear and really focused me up. Just don't be afraid to not know. It takes time to start to understand stuff, but when it clicks, you're gone.
I like it.
Yeah, that's a good one. I would say mine is just to kind of like quiet the imposter syndrome. Like if you're coding and something is working and popping up on the screen, like you're coding, you're developing, that counts, that matters. No matter how small it seems to you, like could you have done that the day before? Probably not. So just keep like building on a little progress and you'll get there and the imposter syndrome will hopefully melt away. Still kind of waiting on that, but.
Me too.
Yeah, I agree with everyone so far. And I would say one thing I wish someone had told me is that, yeah, in general, it's just never too late to learn. And I think there's great freedom in knowing you're never going to learn or know everything. So you might as well start somewhere. I think I was really intimidated to start coding because I had heard of like, you know, the teenager who hacked into Twitter and like all these young people who are so far and beyond like where I could ever imagine being. And I think that like hindered me from even trying at points. And now I'm just so glad that I did. And yeah, I think there's something for everyone to kind of discover with learning anything new, whether it be coding or just baking or I don't know, anything else.
I love it. All of that's really good advice. I get this feeling that, and it really doesn't matter that you had to repeat a module. It feels like you were all students that really cared about your education. You took it seriously, and that's incredibly important. That's going to carry with you throughout your careers. So kudos to you. Call me out in a year or two if I'm completely wrong about that. But yeah, we're going to end with that great advice. So we'll go ahead and do our outros. Connie, if people wanted to reach out to you, where could they reach you?
Is that where I give what do I do?
Yeah, I guess I didn't talk about it before the episode. So it's up to you. Sometimes people just say, here's my LinkedIn. You don't have to give any information whatsoever, but sometimes people shout out websites if you built a app or a blog, anything like that.
My LinkedIn, I think it's Connie H. Hong. And actually, I mean, this is kind of not really a programming thing. Is that okay if I say something that's not programming related? I actually started an Instagram of my sewing projects when I started Turing as kind of an outlet that wasn't coding related to take my eyes away from the screen. And so that's Can Sew on Instagram.
Cool. How about you, Alex?
Yeah, mine's simple, just on LinkedIn under Alexandria Soderman. It's my fancy name to seem professional.
Sounds good. How about you, Joshua?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn at Joshua Aragon, Aragon.
Okay, I love it. So that's Turing. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you have any different opinions, if you disagree with anything, or you have anything extra to add, feel free to leave it in the comments. But Connie, Alex, Joshua, stick around for a couple minutes, but thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.